Okay, I want you to picture this. You are standing in a kitchen, but it is not a normal kitchen.
Not even close.
You're in the deep, humid jungle of the Yucatan Peninsula. The refrigerator is broken. The room is absolutely swarming with flies.
Like a biblical amount of flies, the source says.
And you are standing over a stove, frantically trying to fry a block of frozen cordon bleu.
Which, let's be honest, is not the recommended cooking method for cordon bleu.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
But you have no choice because 6 French tourists just, showed up out of nowhere expecting dinner. And while you're flipping this breaded meat, you're not thinking about the food.
No, you're actively plotting a heist.
And we're not talking about stealing the silverware. We are talking about kidnapping a full-grown man and stealing a wild animal.
It sounds like the plot of a screwball comedy.
It really does. But this is actually the opening scenario of the source material we are diving into today. It's a personal memoir titled Katrina 11207 Good.
Which is a bit of a deceptive title, right?
Totally. You see Katrina, and you assume we are starting in New Orleans with, the rain and the levees. And we will get there.
Oh, we will, and the connection is pretty mind-blowing.
But the story starts somewhere completely different. It starts at this dysfunctional eco-large in Mexico.
It's a fascinating document because it's not really a travel story. It's a character study. It's a look at crisis management and what I like to call the generalissima archetype.
Generalissima.
Yeah.
I love that term. The source uses it to describe the main character, a woman named Nancy.
Exactly.
And our mission today is to figure out what makes a generalissima tick. We're going to track how a botched volunteer vacation turned into a rescue mission, a high-speed chase, and somehow linked up with one of the biggest natural disasters in U.S. history.
It's about connecting those dots between the small chaos of a kitchen and the massive chaos of a hurricane. It's about that refusal to just stand there and watch things fall apart.
So let's get into the jungle. Let's unpack the setting first, because the narrator paints a very specific picture. The place is called Ekbalam.
Right. Ekbalam. It's this village in the Yucatan, and the narrator immediately drops this heavy atmospheric detail.
What's that?
She notes that there's speculation this village is located near the epicenter of the ancient asteroid impact that killed the dinosaurs.
Wow. That is such a mood setter.
Yeah.
You're not just in the woods. You're at ground zero of a prehistoric apocalypse.
It frames the whole experience, doesn't it? It feels primal. The village is described as a traditional Mayan community. Reed and thatch houses, very basic.
And there are these broken concrete foundations scattered around.
Yeah, the source mentions those, remnants of development deals that fell through. It gives it this feeling of almost abandonment, like the modern world tried and just gave up.
And that feeling of abandonment extends to the Eco Lodge, where the narrator and Nancy are staying.
They went there as paying volunteers, thinking they were going to help run a sustainable resort.
But Eco Lodge was doing a lot of heavy lifting in that brochure.
It was essentially code for nothing works.
The fridge situation is the perfect example. The source says the fridge part was broken, so only the freezer worked. In the middle of the jungle heat.
So anything you wanted to keep, you had to freeze it rock solid.
And then there are the flies. The sanitation was, let's call it lacking. The kitchen was just filled with them.
It's nightmare fuel.
So into this chaotic setting, we introduce our cast. We have the narrator, obviously, and we have Nancy. Now, Nancy's the one we really need to watch. Because who packs a sewing machine for a trip to the jungle?
That is my favorite detail about her. Nancy brought a sewing machine and bolts of cloth because she intended to make curtains for the lodge.
That's incredible.
It shows this level of intentionality. She's not just a tourist, she's a fixer. She walks into a room and thinks, what does this space need? Curtains? Okay, I'll make them.
She's prepared for industry, not leisure.
Yeah.
But she's not the only one there. We have to talk about Matthew.
Matthew. This part of the source material really gives the story its emotional weight. Matthew is the gardener at the lodge.
The text describes him as about 30 years old. Sweet, intellectual, but likely on the autism scale or dealing with some kind of psychological affliction.
And his situation there is exploitative. The owner of the lodge, the absentee owner, had enticed Matthew to come down there with the promise of letting him create this grand organic garden.
A dream job for a gardener.
In theory, but the reality, she gave him a 10 by 10 plot of dirt in a shadowy corner where the sun never hit.
So nothing could grow there.
Exactly. So he's working for free, trying to grow plants in the dark, and his living conditions were not good. The source says he had one shirt that he never washed. He was basically living in squalor.
Isolated.
Completely isolated, except for one friend, And this is where the story gets really, Disney in the best way.
The Coati.
The Coati.
For anyone who hasn't Googled a Coati yet, picture a raccoon, but stretched out. Long nose, ring tail. Very cute.
And this was a juvenile wild animal that was just roaming the property. But the source says this wild animal slept with Matthew at night.
That killed me, that image.
It creates this profound bond. You have these two vulnerable beings, Matthew and the Coati, both sort of neglected, both out of place, finding comfort in each other.
It really establishes the stakes. If you leave, you're not just leaving a bad hotel. You're leaving behind a person and his only companion.
Precisely. So the stage is set. You've got the heat, the flies, the broken fridge, the sweet gardener, the Coati, and Nancy with her sewing machine. It's a powder keg.
And then the match gets lit. The owner decides to go shopping.
She leaves, just takes off. And of course, that is the exact moment the universe decides to test them.
6 French guests roll up,
Unannounced.
expecting the full package. They want rooms, they want dinner, they want cold beer, and there is absolutely no staff on site.
Right, and this is the moment where most people would just say, sorry, we don't work here, and just point them down the road.
But this is where the Generalissima archetype kicks in.
Yes, it is. Nancy and the narrator look at each other and basically go, all right, let's do this.
They go into full crisis management, begging Matthew to hose out the kitchen floor, scrubbing the counters with straight vinegar to try and drive back the flies.
And the cooking. This brings us back to the cordon bleu.
Right. Nancy finds these frozen blocks of it in the freezer, because only the freezer works, and she just starts frying them up. The narrator is making rice. It's pure improv.
And the crazy part is, it kind of worked. The source says the guests actually pitched in.
Yeah. Someone started making a salad. Someone else went and found the beer. It turned into this communal effort to save the evening.
It was a triumph in the moment. But I think that adrenaline rush also brought clarity. The source says that once the dust settled, they realized they had made a big mistake getting involved with this lodge.
The illusion shattered. They realized the owner wasn't just quirky, she was negligent. The situation was unsustainable.
Exactly. They knew they had to leave, but they had this ethical dilemma. They couldn't just pack their bags and go.
Because of Matthew.
And the Coati. They realized that the owner had, quote, no compunction about using Matthew. If they left, he would just stay there, working for free in the dark.
So the decision is made. We're checking out. But we are taking the staff and the wildlife with us. The heist is on.
And you have to appreciate the logistics here. You can't just walk out with a wild animal. It's illegal to own a coatimundi, let alone transport one in a taxi.
But before they even tackle the animal problem, they tackle the human one. And I love this detail. They take a taxi all the way to the nearest town just to buy Matthew a shirt.
That really struck me too. I mean, they're planning an escape, they're stressed, but they prioritize buying him a clean shirt.
Why do you think that was so important to them?
It's about dignity. It's a signal to Matthew that he matters. He had been treated like a piece of farm equipment. The clean shirt was a way of saying, you are a person, we are re-entering the world, and you are going to look respectable.
Okay, so Matthew's looking sharp. Now, the Coati problem. How do you smuggle a raccoon-sized animal past the owner?
This is where we get the backstory that explains everything. The source gives us a little flashback about Nancy's history.
The pigeon backpack.
The pigeon backpack. Apparently some time ago, Nancy had been asked to design a backpack for a pigeon.
I laughed out loud reading this. A pigeon.
It was for science. They needed to fly water samples from alpine lakes in Washington to a lab in Seattle. They used pigeons as couriers, and Nancy sewed the little backpacks to hold the vials.
I mean, if you have a friend who has engineered luggage for a bird, there's basically no problem you can't solve.
Exactly. It establishes her as this MacGyver of fabric, so she turns her attention to the Coati. She sits down at her sewing machine and just whips up this pouch.
The text describes it as looking like a Zapatero's cartridge belt.
Yeah, a bandolier. The plan is for Matthew to wear this pouch strapped across his chest. The Coati goes inside, and then he puts his new, clean shirt over the top.
So he just looks like a guy with a remarkably bulky chest.
Very muscular gardener, yes.
The tension in this final scene is cinematic. They have the taxi waiting, they're loading the luggage, the sewing machine. Matthew is strapped in with the concealed animal, and just as the taxi starts to pull away...
The owner returns from her shopping trip.
Of course she does.
She sees the taxi leaving, she sees Matthew is gone, and she starts running after the car screaming, Coati! Where's my Coati?
She knew.
She suspected. And this is the action movie moment. The narrator leans forward to the driver and says in Spanish,
Just step on it.
Step on it. And they're gone. leaving the dust, the flies, and the cordon bleu behind.
I love the adrenaline of that. They actually did it. But now they have fugitives in the car. What's the exit strategy? You can't take a Coati to the airport.
No, and this is where the story shows its heart again. It wasn't just a prank. They were responsible. They went to Tulum and found a rescue center.
In the source has a great update on the animal. It says the Coati was housed with an orphaned baby monkey, and both were very happy.
Which is like another deep dive entirely.
I would watch that cartoon.
Yeah.
What about Matthew?
They traveled up to Cancun. They gave him Nancy's sewing machine, which is a valuable tool he could sell, and a pocket full of money. And they put him on a bus to find friends he had in another part of Mexico.
The narrator writes, Matthew wasn't going to go hungry on our watch.
It's a clean break. They solved the immediate problem. They extracted the victims from the bad situation and set them up for what's next.
And usually that is where the travel story ends. You go home, you tell your friends, hey, guess what? I stole a wild animal in Mexico, and everyone laughs.
But this is the deep dive, and we are looking at the bigger picture, because the file name is Katrina.
Right. The transition here is almost jarring in how powerful it is.
Yeah.
Nancy and the narrator fly back to the States the next day. They're in the air, flying north from the Yucatan. And the text describes them looking out the starboard windows of the plane.
And they see the clouds?
They are looking down at the massive, massive buildup of Hurricane Katrina.
It gives you chills, doesn't it? The narrator mentions they had originally gone to Mexico to help after Hurricane Emily, but that trip ended with them witnessing the birth of Katrina from the sky.
It shifts the scale completely. You go from the micro chaos of the fly-infested kitchen
to the macro chaos of a historic disaster. And the question becomes, does that generalissima energy, that willingness to step up and fix the broken fridge, does that translate when the world is falling apart on a massive scale?
And the answer is yes. We shift settings now. We are out of the jungle. We're in Conroe, Texas, just north of Houston.
This was a major relocation zone. Thousands of displaced people from the coast were moved there after the storm. They were given apartments.
Which sounds like a win. Housing is the first step.
It is. But the source highlights a critical failure in the official response. The apartments were completely empty. No furniture, no beds, no towels, not even pots and pans. Just four walls and a roof.
Wow. Imagine that. You have lost everything. You are traumatized. You are moved to a strange city. You walk into your safe haven and you have to sleep on the floor.
It's demoralizing. And this is where Nancy, back in her own element, sees the gap. The source says she's living in an exclusive and white-gated community. She could have just written a check.
But checks don't provide a place to sit today.
Exactly. She realized the systems were failing to provide the basics, so the Generalissime returns.
She turns her garage into a warehouse. She recruits her neighbors, and she effectively raids the local thrift stores.
She emptied them. The text says she bought everything: pots, pans, beds, chairs, card tables. She created a supply chain out of her driveway.
It's the same energy as the Coati pouch, isn't it?
It is exactly the same. It's logistical empathy. It's looking at a problem and manufacturing a solution with whatever is at hand.
But there's one more detail in this Texas segment that really elevated the story for me. It wasn't just about the furniture.
No. The source mentions that after the physical needs were met, after the beds were delivered, Nancy did something else. She sat down and she interviewed the victims.
She listened to them.
She compiled their stories into a book, and she gave a copy of that book to each family she helped.
Why do you think she did that?
Well, think about what happens in a disaster. You become a victim. You become a statistic. You lose your agency. People see your need, but they stop seeing you.
You become the displaced person.
Right. By recording their stories, Nancy was saying, your history matters. You are not just a person who needs a frying pan. You are a person with a life and a story and a voice.
It connects right back to Matthew's shirt.
It really does. Buying the shirt wasn't about hygiene. It was about dignity. Making the book wasn't about reading material. It was about dignity.
It seems like the core theme here is simply the refusal to look away.
That's it. It's the refusal to be a bystander. The narrator wraps up with this very touching thought. She writes, I hope those families remember her. I hope Matthew remembers us. People need to know that other people care.
It sounds so simple. People need to know people care. But when you look at the lengths they went to, smuggling animals, raiding thrift stores, it's heavy.
It is, and it brings us back to that strange file name, Katrina. Good.
Yeah, Katrina, good.
I think it suggests that even inside a disaster as massive as Katrina or as messy as a botched vacation, there is good to be found. But the catch is, it doesn't just appear naturally.
It has to be manufactured.
It has to be made by the Nancys of the world, by the people who don't wait for permission.
That's the real takeaway for me. We spend a lot of our lives waiting for the official fix. We wait for the lodge owner to fix the fridge. We wait for FEMA to bring the beds.
You assume someone else is in charge, they will handle it.
But this story shows us that often they are not coming, or they're out shopping, and the cockpit is empty.
And you have to step up.
You have to sew the backpack.
You have to sew the backpack. I love that.
So here's our challenge to you listening today. Look around at the systems you rely on. If they broke tomorrow, if the flies took over the kitchen or the apartment was empty, do you have it in you to become the Generalissima? Or are you just going to wait for the owner to come back?
I think we know what Nancy would do.
I think we do. Go find your inner Generalissima, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Take care.